Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said there is no meeting planned between Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky, despite days of US-led shuttle diplomacy and a public push by President Donald Trump to stage a leader-level summit soon. Lavrov told NBC's Meet the Press that Putin would be ready to meet when the agenda would be ready, but added that the agenda is not ready at all. At almost the same moment, Zelensky, flanked in Kyiv by NATO's new Secretary-General Mark Rutte, accused Moscow of trying to block direct talks and said any leader meeting could only follow concrete, written security guarantees for Ukraine from the US and allied partners. He has asked for those guarantees to be structured within 7 to 10 days, likening them to a deterrent modelled on NATO's below is a comprehensive briefing on how we got here, what's happening now, the very latest developments, and what outcomes are realistically on the table, with on-record sourcing and verified posts to ground each claim. Putin and Zelensky have met in person just once at the Normandy Format Summit in Paris on December 9, 2019, alongside France and Germany. It produced a prisoner exchange, but not a durable roadmap. The full-scale war that began in 2022 ended that format. Since Russia's 2022 invasion, Moscow has pressed maximalist conditions, from territorial claims to security limits on Ukraine, while Kyiv has insisted any settlement must respect Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Those clashing premises still frame today's talks. In mid-August, Trump and Putin held a high-profile Alaska summit that did not yield a ceasefire. Days later, Trump hosted Zelensky and European leaders in Washington, publicly vowing to help assemble security guarantees for Kyiv and to arrange a Putin-Zelensky meeting, potentially followed by a US-involved trilateral. The White House even said Putin had agreed in principle to a bilateral, a claim Russia has conspicuously declined to confirm. Reporting this week outlines Moscow's key conditions. Ukraine would cede the remaining Donbass and accept restrictions ruling out NATO membership and Western troops in Ukraine. Those terms, which Kyiv rejects, underscore why an agenda is so hard to finalize. Lavrov's line today is unambiguous. Without an agreed agenda, there will be no Putin-Zelensky sit-down. He portrayed Russia as ready to meet, but only at the very end of a process in which officials first settle core issues, and he repeated doubts about Zelensky's legitimacy, a message that plays to domestic Russian audiences. Zelensky and Ukraine's partners are drafting a security guarantees architecture, a package that would define who provides what: air defense munition flows, training, financing, and response mechanisms if Russia escalates again. Zelensky has said he expects those guarantees to be formalized on paper within the next week to 10 days. The White House says Putin agreed to a bilateral with a possible US-involved trilateral later, but the Kremlin has not publicly validated that narrative. Even as Lavrov dismissed summit talk today, despite the diplomatic flurry, the battlefield has not paused. In the last 48 hours, Russia launched one of its largest drone and missile barrages of the month, hitting an American-owned factory in western Ukraine. Kyiv, meanwhile, struck Russia's Druzhba pipeline link that supplies EU states. The violence underscores the risks of negotiating amid active conflict. NATO's Rutte made an unannounced stop in Kyiv today as allies discuss robust security guarantees that deter future Russian attacks. Ideas under review range from bilateral defense treaties to a multi-country coalition of the willing that would deliver specific capabilities and trigger rapid resupply if Russia reinvades, short of a formal NATO treaty. Across multiple appearances, Lavrov has stressed that Russia must be included in any talks on Ukraine's security and that Kyiv has rejected proposed principles: no NATO territorial concessions on Donbass, limits on Western presence. Today's no agenda, no meeting formulation is the hardest on-record rebuff yet to Washington's near-term summit timeline. After the Washington meetings, Zelensky told reporters the guarantees would be detailed on paper within 7 to 10 days, and that only then would a leader-level meeting be useful. He has also publicly pressed for a strong reaction from the US if Putin refuses to engage. Washington has floated Budapest. Zelensky called that challenging given Hungary's alignment with Moscow, and he has suggested Switzerland, Austria or Turkey as more acceptable alternatives for trilateral or sequential talks. Russia has not endorsed any of these venues. Analysis of the Alaska summit notes that Putin emerged with leverage while Washington did not secure a ceasefire. That dynamic fed into this week's DC optics. Big promises, thin specifics, and now the Russian no-agenda line. On his official Telegram channel, Zelensky has framed security first, then durable peace, and warned partners against decisions without Ukraine. Meanwhile, US reporters and outlets on X amplified the White House line that Putin had agreed in principle to a meeting, a claim Moscow has not affirmed. These posts illustrate how public narratives are being shaped in real time. Moscow's reported demand that Kyiv give up the remaining Donbas is politically radioactive in Ukraine and unacceptable to most of Kyiv's backers. Kyiv's constitution and public opinion foreclose recognizing Russian control. This is the beating heart of the stalemate. Russia demands no NATO membership for Ukraine and no Western troops on Ukrainian soil. Kyiv and its partners counter with a design for security guarantees, not NATO membership, but real commitments with teeth on air defense, munitions pipelines, training, and rapid reinforcement if Russia returns. Trump has at times praised the concept of a ceasefire, but has also echoed the Russian line that a comprehensive peace should be negotiated while fighting continues, a position European allies see as risky if it locks in Russian gains without credible enforcement. Until there is a principled outline touching all three clusters, Moscow has little incentive to put Putin next to Zelensky for a photo that could be spun as movement. And Kyiv has little reason to sit down without a guarantees framework, lest the summit serve only to press Ukraine on concessions. The guarantees paper slips beyond Zelensky's 7 to 10-day window. Russia keeps insisting the agenda is unripe. The White House lowers expectations. Fighting continues on current trajectories. Russia probes in the east, Ukraine husbanding air defences and long-range munitions. Pressure grows on Washington and European capitals to publish at least the outline of a guarantees package to prove progress. Energy risk ticks up if strikes on the Druzhba pipeline recur, adding to EU supply anxieties. AP News. The US and a coalition of European partners publish a framework defining concrete pledges, e.g. annual air defence deliveries, multi-year financing, rapid resupply triggers. Officials first, then leaders. A durable support regime short of NATO but more enforceable than past pledges. A choice and test the guarantees militarily later or negotiate while the West's commitment is codified. P, to reconcile Washington's public claims with Moscow's reluctance, a low-risk encounter, third country, brief, tightly choreographed, occurs with no joint statement. Trump claims momentum, Putin avoids committing to substance. Zelensky uses it to press for harsher sanctions if Russia backtracks, sets up disillusionment if no follow-through, possibly eroding Western unity the next time a big promise is made. Another Russian mass strike, perhaps on critical infrastructure, coincides with a hardening of rhetoric. Kyiv expands deep strike options in response. Greater risk to Western Ukrainian plants and energy nodes, more displacement, renewed calls for additional sanctions and more permissive rules for Western-supplied weapons, a direction EU officials have hinted at if Moscow stonewalls. After several days of White House-fueled optimism, Moscow has publicly reasserted the pre-agenda veto, reminding everyone that negotiations only move when power realities change. Kyiv's insistence on guarantees first is now explicit, time-bound, and tied to NATO consultations. Any meeting that precedes this would be politically costly for Zelensky at home. The disconnect between Washington's messaging, agreement in principle, and Moscow's dismissal risks public fatigue unless the US can publish a concrete guarantees outline within days. Does Washington circulate a written guarantees framework to allies and Kyiv within 7 to 10 days, as Zelensky expects? Watch for specific checkable deliverables, Patriot IRIS-T rotations, ammunition production contracts, multi-year funding lines. If Russia quietly engages on text, even while publicly denying a summit that will leak via Moscow or European capitals. Conversely, if Lavrov escalates his legitimacy attacks on Zelensky, that signals delay. If Budapest fades and Switzerland, Austria or Turkey gain traction, that suggests US-Ukraine alignment is prevailing on format. Still no guarantee Russia signs on. Another high-visibility strike, especially on Western-owned assets in Ukraine, could be time to upend summit planning and harden Western positions. The near-term Putin-Zelensky summit that Washington has tried to midwife now hinges on two documents Moscow has so far avoided: a workable agenda that doesn't front-load Ukrainian concessions, and a security guarantees framework strong enough to reassure Kyiv and deter future Russian aggression. until those texts exist and the battlefield quiets enough to make negotiations politically survivable on both sides, today's no meeting planned is likely to hold.